Hi and welcome to RCKicks. On today's show, well, we're back working on this, the BT-01 from Tamiya. Now, I've done two videos on this one, I think it is. I did an unboxing video and I've also done a chassis build video to get it to this point. Now, if you haven't seen those, I'll put a link up here. Go check them out before you watch this one, as you've kind of come halfway through. So in this video, the plan is we will turn our attentions from the chassis to building up the bodies. Yes, bodies. I have two for this. Now, the plan originally is I'm going to raffle this off, so you're going to be in with a chance to win this. But being that you can have rear wheel drive or front wheel drive, or if you mod it, you can actually have it four wheel drive, there's lots of different body options. So being that I've got it in front wheel drive, as I want to see how it actually handles, fitting the kit body, which is the Supra, well, that's rear wheel drive, so that doesn't really work. So I scoured the internet and I found kind of a car that's front wheel drive ish, which I kind of covered in the last video, and it's the Opel Calibra V6 Cliff. Granted, that was actually four-wheel drive, they modified it, but most Calibra cars were front-wheel drive that were on the road. Apart from the turbo, which a lot of you keep telling me is four-wheel drive until the transfer box blows up. Apparently that must be a weak point. So bear with me. So the plan is I'm going to do two bodies for this. I'm going to do the Supra as a support vehicle. So I'm going to do it the same Cliff livery as the V6 Cliff Opel. So the winner of this car will have two bodies in the same livery style for this chassis, as well as I'll do two sets of wheels. So I've got those ones and I've got these ones, so then we'll get those as well. So there is some madness. There is some method to my madness, and also I'm going to do a few modifications in another video where I'm going to add a few more cool little bits and pieces. So if that interests you, stay tuned. Right, let's paint up two bodies. Two sets of decals, two sets of painting, two sets of masking. It's going to be a long one, this one, but something a little bit different. So yes, this is going to be a bit of a challenge, especially doing two bodies the same, two sets of decals. But the first thing we've got to do, same as always, cut out the body. Once it's cut out, we need to make sure it fits. So I adjusted the body mounts. Also, I have to be very careful about cutting the body mounts, as I need to test both bodies to make sure that they're going to fit before I trim them. Then we give it a good clean to get rid of all the fixing agent, just like normal. Definitely worth doing, otherwise you can get paint that reacts with the fixing agent if you don't clean it off first. Did find these lights a little bit of a challenge to get everything lined up, but the other window masks went in no problem at all. Now luckily for me on this one, we're painting both bodies black, which means I don't have to back in white and then back in black. So it's way less time and effort into painting them up. So that's the painting of the first body done. Now we have to return our attentions to the decals. Now we need to remove the protective film, obviously, don't make that rookie mistake, and start cutting them all out. Also, there's some extra hardware that I need to paint up, and I decided to paint up the rims as well, as I'm not too sold on that kind of plastic silver look. Now, one thing I found that was a bit of a challenge was the decals for the headlights. Getting them looking straight and with no air bubbles is a real challenge. The Supra decal smoked windows, I never like to use them. So what I do is I cut it out and I use just the surround, and then I smoke the windows with PS paint, as I think it gives a much better overall finish. So someone asked me about the water technique and how I use it. So I'm going to give you a quick demonstration of how I do it. And it's not as complicated as you think. First, just get some water. You can just use plain water on its own, or you can put some washing up liquid in it. It will help a little bit, but most of the time I do it just with water. Now I've just got a body here. I'm actually going to do it on the inside, as this body's got protective film on it, and you wouldn't normally be putting stickers on a protective film, but it will work for this demonstration to just put it on the inside. Now there's just normal stickers, so if you take a normal sticker and if it's one that you need to really line up a lot, the best thing to do is you can just dip it into the water just like that. Also with your finger you can actually just put a bit of water on the actual part itself, and then when you put the decal down you can actually fully move it around. Oh, it's already set, but you can move it around, see, line it up exactly how you want it, And then when you're happy with it where it is, you take a bit of a dry cloth, you dab it down, you start removing the water, and then it'll actually set in place. And then that will dry like that, and it will be just like it was before. Now it also, if you're going to use these stickers that are windows that are actually sort of see-through, I'll take this one I'm not using. This water technique is brilliant for these if you're going to use it. If you just stick this down, you always end up with hundreds of little air bubbles, and then it just dries and looks naff. So what you can do is exactly the same thing. Put a bit more water on the actual body, take the whole decal, sink it totally in the water. You want quite a bit of water for these, more so. And then you can still do the same thing of plonking it down, moving it around. And then when you're happy, what you do is you start to squirt out all the oil, water. Whoop. But you can see that it doesn't stick down, which is what you want. And then you slowly remove all the moisture from it. And then once the water's out of it, when you let it dry, there's been no air in there. It will actually give you a really uniformed finish. Can't really see on that side, but there's no air bubbles in it whatsoever. And if you make a really big mistake, it's not the end of the world. You can lift it off, you can move it, and you can put it down again. You've got to give it a little bit of time, and it will slowly dry back out just like a normal decal, and that works really well. Now there is one caveat to this, and that's if you've got angles that are really aggressive. For instance, if I wanted to put a decal that is under a lot of pressure, say here, this point here, if I use the water technique here and put this down on here and then over like that, what's happening is there's a lot of stress going on here, and it can start to lift. Now it will dry out eventually, but it's never 100% as strong as it was because you put water in it. It's pretty decent, but you've just got to know its limitations. Now you can see that's because that's quite a large area, that is actually stuck down okay. But if it's a tiny little area and it's just a fold, the pressure of the sticker to unfold itself will be strong. So you just got to learn where your limits are. But obviously a lot of times you're doing some really complicated stuff. Trying to line it all up is really difficult. So the water technique can really help you out, and I use it quite a lot. Now luckily for me on this one, the Cliff decal livery is very simple. Everything's kind of on its own. There's not much lining up that needs to be done apart from the side that you can see now between the bottom and the Cliff, and the Decra 20 logo that you see on the back there. That's in two parts. You've got the top part and then there's a small bit around the bottom. Painting up the hardware, I just use normal car paint and then I clear it. That tends to work fine for me. I don't really have any issues and it's a lot cheaper. So we're finally getting through fitting all these decals, and I think it actually works. I'm always trying to get to the point where the car looks like it could have been a real car. So when I put the decals on, I kind of try and think, does that look okay? Would it go there? Cutting around and taking the extra effort to clean up your decals is definitely worth doing. It lifts the whole kit. It does take a little bit more time, but I really don't like that clear decal that if you leave it and just cut round in one big circle. It's worth putting the effort in to give it a real clean look. Now I've cleared all the hardware. I tend to leave the clear for a good 24 to 48 hours before I fit the tyres, as it's very easy to rush it, and then when you're fitting the tyres, your fingerprints go into the clear coat. Just got to fit the tyre surround lettering, and we're getting close. Now I decided to paint up the rear spoiler in silver just to kind of tie it into this livery a little bit more. I did fit a decal on the spoiler, but I didn't like it, so I removed it. That's that one pretty much done, so let's turn our attentions to the actual opal. Now this body is a lot more of a challenge than the last one. It has a lot more angles, and believe it or not, the flared arches make it a lot more difficult to cut the arches out smoothly. So one thing I tend to use is this tool here. Believe it or not, it's a tool for dogs for wearing down their claws, but my dog hated it, so I ended up inheriting it, and it's perfect for really dialing in any kind of edges or wheel arches. It grinds off just enough but without being too aggressive. Same as we did before, we have to go and clean all the fixing agent out of it. So the usual, I use a brush, bit of washing up liquid, then I wipe it down. I use kitchen towel to dry it off because it's kind of lint free, so it doesn't leave lots of bits of paper inside the body, but it's great for drying out, and you don't want to just leave it to dry as the water will evaporate and leave watermarks. These window decals were a lot easier. There was no issues fitting them. It's nice, big, flat, open spaces. So once that was done, we had to then paint it up. Again, luckily only just in black, so that saved me tons of time. I was happy with the outcome when I removed the decals. We're still going to smoke the windows just like I did in the Supra. Now, if you take your time when you're fitting your window mask, you can get a real sharp edge to it. That means you don't necessarily need to use all the decal window edging. So on this body, I used the front and the rear, but I didn't put any around the sides as I like that crisp line. Again, same, take your time, cut round all your decals, get rid of any excess decal clear, as that just looks naff. Now the front of this is a real challenge. That silver part, getting it to lay down flat without any air bubbles is a real challenge. Now that silver decals doesn't like to be messed with too much. If you stretch it or if you run your finger over it too much, it starts to show. So take your time on that one. I did find it was really difficult to get it looking nice. Now if you look carefully at it, you'll see that I've actually got a few decals where I kind of covered up the odd little mark just to make it look a lot better. There we go, we're getting really close to finishing up these two cars, and I'm really chuffed with them. I think they look fantastic. There's just the last few on that side to do. By now, after doing so many, I've got a lot better at lining them up and getting them all on the car. So there we go, after many hours, and it just went on and on and on, I have two finished bodies for the BT-01. Well, when I say finished, I mean not finished, because I've got some ideas of where I'm going to take these. Yes, I haven't finished with them. We're going to do some modifications in an upcoming video. I've already placed an order for a roof rack for this car and some 1/10 scale parts. I've got some boxes, I've got fire extinguisher, and I want to make this car look more like a support car for that one. Also, I'm going to put a driver cockpit in this one in the future video as well, and we've got to turn our attentions to dialing out that slop. So I'm going to do a bit more of that and see if I can improve the chassis. Then we're going to take it for a little bit of a drive as well and see how it handles in its front wheel form. So if you'd like to be with the chance to win these, I'll put a link in the description. Head over there, and for the price of a coffee, you could end up owning these. Thanks so much. See you on the next one. Bye bye.